I'm Toni Esselin.
And I'm Amy Bernard.
And we are here to help make it make sense.
This is the podcast that takes complicated science and breaks it down into easy to understand language.
So buckle up, buttercups. You are in for a bumpy ride.
We're on.
All right. We are back to talk about polio. Interestingly, I don't know if you guys are watching that First Ladies series on Showtime, but it's about the First Ladies. They talk about Michelle Obama, Eleanor Roosevelt, and Betty Ford.
Mm-hmm.
Betty Ford was a badass, by the way. And and I was reminded that that's what FDR had.
Yeah, that's right.
Roosevelt, he actually had polio, which is what made him paralyzed and why he was in a wheelchair for his administration.
Yeah, I remember in history books, they would say that FDR asked the media, which back in that day was really just like the radio and newspapers.
Yeah.
To not take pictures of him below the waist.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to only be portrayed like chest up because he wanted to appear, I think, strong to countries across the world and didn't want so I thought that was really interesting. I mean, of course, nowadays people be like, oh, okay, we're gonna not listen to that request at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like, exactly. Oh, where do you not want to sit? That's exactly.
Exactly. We'll just cut off the top part then.
Yeah, exactly.
But I just thought that was really interesting. Sad that he thought that way, but I think, but it was nice that they respected, as far as I can tell, they respected his request. And yeah,
we're not in that era anymore, but
no.
But that's a good series to see like what the First Ladies were doing. And Eleanor Roosevelt, another one, she was no joke. Like, these are no joke human beings, right? So
that's awesome.
I want to learn more. It made me want to learn more about them. But anywho, so I got a bunch of questions about polio because polio in the news scared a lot of mamas.
Yeah.
And so I got a lot of mamas sending me messages, and so I have some questions. So I'm going to start with the first one. Is polio back?
Well, we did see a paralytic polio case in, was it Rockland County in New York, correct?
Yeah.
And they've been finding polio in the wastewater. It's been found New York, London, Jerusalem. I don't know. Those are the three places that I know about. Can I explain why they look for it in the wastewater?
Yeah, I was hoping you would. Please do.
Yeah, so remember, I'm a nerd that used to teach virology. I now just focus on immunology, but I used to also teach virology. But so the reason why they look for it in the wastewater is that poliovirus, it's considered a small RNA virus, but it's called an enterovirus. And enteroviruses are viruses that infect the gastrointestinal system. So the GI tract, it's spread by the oral fecal route, which people often don't like to think about, but happens a lot in, say, preschools and things. Or people who don't wash their hands and prepare food, as an example, after they have gone to the bathroom. Always wash your hands. Moral of the story, wash your hands.
Right. You bathe in water that someone pooped in.
Right. That's not a good thing. I think FYI, we shouldn't do that. But enterovirus is because it is, it inhabits the gastrointestinal system, so the intestines. So often, if you want to look for viruses that would infect the intestines, you would look in the wastewater because that's where it would be shed. So that's how like infectious particles or virus would come out into the environment, would be in feces. So that's why we look for it in the wastewater. So That's why they monitor, they as in like governments will monitor wastewater for all kinds of things. Just because they want to make sure, is the wastewater clean, or are there any viruses out there? So this is not something that they just started. They just happened to find polio in the wastewater. So that's why.
Right. And that tells you that there are a lot of people walking around with asymptomatic infection.
Yes.
Basically, or asymptomatic meaning they don't have symptoms of infection. They're walking around just like you and I, but they haven't, they are harboring the infection, and it's of no consequence to them, and they're pooping it out.
Yep.
And do you want to talk a little bit about what shedding means in virology?
Yeah, so shedding is just really when you are releasing viral particles, like infectious viral particles. So that's all that it means. So like, as an example, when we wear masks to protect us from inhaling respiratory droplets that people have coughed into the air.
Oh no. No,
exactly, because you can, yeah, with the freshly coughed pocket of air. So when you have COVID, you can shed virus in those respiratory droplets. So that's just essentially releasing infectious particles of the virus. So that's really all that shedding means. And it just depends on the route of the virus. Like, where does it infect you? Where is it replicating and making more virus? That's why not all viruses will be shed in respiratory droplets, because they're not all going to be coughed or exhaled out when you speak, right? So right. We look for polio in the wastewater because it infects the intestines. But we would look in the air potentially, or in respiratory droplets, for SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, or things like the flu, because we know that those are respiratory. So it's really just releasing virus.
Very good.
Would you add to that, or?
No. I just, there's a lot of conversation or people, I've heard people say shedding, and I just want to make sure everybody understands what we mean by shedding. Where did it come from, and can it be spread in schools? I'm going to answer the last part and say yes, it can be spread in schools.
It can be spread anywhere.
It can be spread anywhere. And remember, if you go back to our episode of Petri dishes, under 5, children spread everything because there are no boundaries. They think the most disgusting thing is the thing that they should lick. And so that's just children. So that's why it can be spread in schools. Yes. But you have an origin story for polio?
I don't know, like, you mean like when we found it first and where it traces back to?
Yeah, if you have that, or
I don't necessarily have that. I was looking through my old lecture.
Yes.
And I'm tempted to
oh no.
I won't share my screen, but I'm looking at, I'm visual. I have to look at photos of things. Like, that's how my brain works.
That's right.
If I can't draw it out, it's not happening.
That's right. I get you.
So what I can tell you about the family of viruses that polio comes from is that they're typically found in mammals and birds. So it probably originated somewhere like that. But we do know that it infects the intestinal tract, or the gut. So that's where it tends to kind of propagate in our bodies. Poliovirus, this is kind of interesting. We have a very effective vaccine to poliovirus because there are not very many versions of poliovirus, which honestly is amazing. So can I get a little nerdy?
Yeah, please get nerdy.
So if you're looking at the virus, like the virus ball, which I'm depicting with my hand here. So you know how, like, we talk about SARS-CoV-2 and how they have these little spikes on the outside, and that's what we want our immune system to recognize.
Mhm.
The spikes with SARS-CoV-2 are changing a lot, and that's what makes us it's harder for our immune system to always, like, if it changes, then our immune system has to, retrain itself, right?
Mhm.
Poliovirus, it actually, it keeps its outer shell pretty much identical. It has these canyons. I know they're called clefts or canyons. That's the part that, like, if you're gonna find, that's where, like, the attachment molecules that are in the GI tract actually go into these canyon areas. So it
Mm.
doesn't, instead of spikes, it has like canyons. And because the canyons are not like external, like you can think of, the outer shell has this kind of almost identical structure. The canyon is where the bit of protein in our intestines kind of binds. And the canyon, because it's inside, it doesn't need to change much. So we have very few versions or variants of poliovirus, which has made the vaccine much easier. And that's why it's been so stable for so many years. Like when there was the huge polio outbreaks in the early 1950s, they came up with this vaccine that covers all three of the different serotypes. It hasn't changed. And it's
Wow.
because of the canyons. I know. As you were geeking out earlier about how awesome the human body is, I'm like, poliovirus has canyons. This is so cool.
Exactly. Exactly.
The Grand
Polio,
Canyon.
polio was one of the viruses that was on the docket to be eliminated, like smallpox. We were really close. There were a couple of pockets in South Asia, and Southeast
Afghanistan and
Asia.
Pakistan had a little bit.
That's right. And in some places in sub-Saharan Africa,
Yeah.
we were closing in,
So close. So close.
we didn't make it. We didn't make it. And a lot of the reasons why we didn't make it is, there are a lot of reasons. A lot of them, we want to talk about vaccine equity. That's an issue.
Yep.
We want to talk about access. That's an issue.
Yep.
And what happened was that also there was this groundswell again after that entire autism business that happened back in the 90s of the man who will not be named.
Voldemort.
Who will not be named. And then that whole sparked an entire new, not an anti-vax campaigns are not new, but it sparked a new wave.
Invigorated.
Yes. It invigorated this campaign. And so there are now more folks in the United States and in Europe who are not vaccinated. And so again, that's more substrate, if you will, or that's more opportunity for the polio virus to go, yeehaw!
Yeah. If you
We
think
got
about,
another
like, I like to think about unvaccinated people like kindling. Kindling is like the stuff that starts fires pretty easily, like leaves and little tiny twigs. That's kind of what it's like. We can start really uncontrollable fires of disease, infectious disease, if we don't, if we have a lot of kindling unvaccinated individuals.
Right. And this is unvaccinated individuals who can be vaccinated, right? Like talking about unvaccinated folks who cannot be for whatever reason because they have a medical issue or they're allergic or something. But the more you have folks that are able to be vaccinated who don't get vaccinated, then the more opportunity that virus has to infect and to propagate. And so that's basically part of the origin story for this new outbreak. And you want to, there is the other part. I don't know. I think you said that you had something to say about the fact that what the news is saying about this is that this is vaccine derived. This is vaccine derived polio. And so did you want to explain what that meant?
Yeah. So it's it sounds a lot worse than it is. But so with vaccine derived poliovirus, we have two forms of the vaccine. there's the oral version, which is it's called a live attenuated virus, which just means it's fancy words, jargon for a virus that is weakened to the point that it does not cause disease, but it's live. So when you get that vaccine, your immune system is like super activated. It has like a great, awesome response to live attenuated because it's like a real thing is coming in and it gets to train on like the real thing, right? So live attenuated vaccines are awesome from the perspective of your immune system has a lot to train on. But these are also non-harmful forms, like they've been weakened to the point where they are not harmful, which obviously a lot of safety and efficacy trials that go into that. So there's the oral version, which is live attenuated, so weakened live virus to help train. We also have the inactivated polio vaccine, and that's just what it sounds like. It's been killed. So and that's the shot version. So the shot version you would get, and I'm showing you my flu vaccine my Band-Aid from my flu vaccine yesterday, and I'm feeling fabulous today.
Next episode.
Yeah, you would get. Well, I still have to brag.
Yeah.
So you would get the injected form, and it's killed. So there's a small, a certain amount, but that's all your immune system gets to train on. It still works wonderfully. But those are two different forms. And the oral polio vaccine, you've probably seen pictures of kiddos getting it. It's like little drops, little oral drops. In any textbook, you're going to see little kids getting these like little drops. It's so cute. But the oral polio vaccine, because it's live attenuated, the more people that we have that are not vaccinated, and there's, the shedding of virus in the wastewater, sometimes that can be picked up. And over time, you can see the accumulation of mutations or changes in that polio virus that's derived from the vaccine that can be picked up in usually it's unvaccinated individuals who would not mount a response or a defense to that. And there might be some the accumulation of mutations or changes over time that would make that virus act more and more like the wild type or the version that can cause harm. So that's what we're seeing. And it's the individual in Rockland County, New York. It was thought to be derived from the oral polio vaccine. I believe the individual had traveled in the past, had picked it up elsewhere because, breaking news. We don't use the oral polio vaccine in the United States, and we haven't for many, many years. But it is used in other countries. Again, back to vaccine equity. And problems that arise from that, but that is, I think, in maybe a slightly easier version to obtain, and it's being used in some other countries, not the United States. But that's where that individual picked it up. Over time, if you're unvaccinated, you have no defense against it. It's gonna continue to propagate or replicate. It's gonna make more virus. It's gonna pick up some mutations, and it can then potentially revert back to the original, well, not the original, but revert back to a form that could maybe cause harm. So that's how this particular individual was thought to now have paralytic polio. But like,
what, so can I say this back to you? Can I say this back to you to make sure that I understood?
Yeah.
So if I understood, then that means the vaccine derived is basically that it's a weaker version of the virus. It's not supposed to be infectious. However, if you come into contact with somebody who might be still shedding this attenuated or weakened version of this virus, that weakened version of this virus now gets to somebody else who is not vaccinated. That can cause an environment that is primed for mutation. And now that virus that is weakened can now gain strength and look a little bit more like the real infectious virus,
Yep.
which is what a vaccine-derived virus can look like. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, yeah. I think that and individuals that might pick that up and have the weakened, non-harmful version kind of growing in their intestinal system over time. It's not going to change back or become harmful in probably the majority of individuals that would pick it up. It would, again, mutations are random. They happen randomly. The longer that virus would have to live in that person's intestine or whatever, the more chance of picking up mutations. So it's definitely not, it would not happen with every individual. It's kind of bad luck and just the way mutations go. So
yeah, it's kind of random. But I think that
yeah.
The reason, so then I can see somebody, so I'm just putting my anti-vax hat on, right? And so I can see that someone would be like, well, why are you giving a vaccine that can actually cause something? Like, why does that even exist, right?
Yeah.
I think part of the answer could be, and I would love for you to elaborate, part of the answer would be that if everybody got that vaccine, we wouldn't be
right
in this position, because
That's
then
right.
that inactivated, weakened virus would have no place to go.
Right. No, I completely, I agree.
But if somebody else would just be like, you're giving us vaccines that could turn into a live wild type, whatever it is that you're saying, why is this a good thing? So I wanted you to
I think I think if everyone were vaccinated, this would not be a problem. If everyone were vaccinated, we would have eradicated this.
Right. Which we were close.
So close.
We were so close.
We were so close. The other thing is, and this gets to vaccine equity and just differences between countries, right? Is that the United States was looking at the data, and other countries as well, and saw that this was a possibility with the oral polio vaccine, and they stopped using it years and years ago because of that. So inactivated polio vaccine is the only thing that you can get here anymore, and it's been that way for years. Other countries that maybe don't have as many resources, it's better. I think that the thought is it's better to use a vaccine than no vaccine. So oral polio vaccine is used in a variety of countries, I think, that don't have the access or resources to switch only to the inactivated form.
Which is, we will say, and I will happily say, is a problem.
Yes, it is.
Inactivated should be available throughout the world.
Agreed.
But again, capitalism.
So yeah. And the thing is, like,
vaccine inequity, and so this is part of the reason why we are now facing this. We actually thought, I at least in the, as a pediatrician who works in global health, we were like, oh, polio is gonna come back.
Yeah.
years ago, we were like, polio is gonna come back. Like, we were really, there was one time when that graph was sweet, and we were like, oh, it's really, we're almost there. This was probably like, I believe I was it was either like right out of residency, so probably good 10 years ago, maybe about 10 years ago or so. We were like, this is gonna happen. We're almost there. And then there were just pockets of outbreaks. And it just seemed like it got farther and farther away. So we've always been fearful that this was going to actually happen, especially in the context of the anti-vax movements that have been occurring in the United States and in Europe. And so this is where we are, and that's why it's it's back.
So does that, I think that explains. Okay.
Yeah, I think that was helpful. And if it wasn't, just let us know. Shoot us an email and tell us.
We'll try again.
What? Yeah, and we'll try to do it again. If you had the vaccine when you were a baby, would you need to get it again if it started showing sign of resurgence? So I think this is a great question. I think that boosters or extra doses are always a possibility when we're talking to viruses. The way in which to answer that question is that we would have to see how many folks who are vaccinated with the full series of vaccines, how many of those folks are actually getting polio. And then we would be able to evaluate the effectiveness. This is something that we did with whooping cough.
Yeah.
When whooping cough we started to see that the vaccine was waning in its efficacy because of the fact that a lot of people were coming down with whooping cough after they had actually gotten vaccinated.
Yeah.
It's happening a lot in children, and for children whose parents were pregnant, right? They were passing it to their babies. And so we were like, oh no, we need a booster. We need another shot of the whooping cough vaccine. And so that's basically how we're going to be able to see. Right now, as far as I understand, and Dr. Amy, please correct me, I have not seen polio in vaccinated people. I have not seen data of that at the moment today. I have not seen that today. The folks that are getting polio are all the folks that have not gotten vaccinated, either because they didn't have access to the vaccine, or they've refused the vaccine, or they weren't able.
That's my understanding as well. And I was looking to see what was the recommendations right now. And the only recommendation is if you are completely uncertain about your vaccination status, which usually you would have gotten this polio vaccine as a child.
Right.
So if you are uncertain about that, like if you ask your parents and they can't find your records, I mean, you probably did get it, but if you are completely uncertain and worried about it, I think you could talk to your doctor and you could discuss whether you think you should get that or not. The other thing from my understanding is that they're recommending it for people who might be in high risk situations, that maybe living with, or in close intimate contact with someone who maybe have been exposed, or potentially healthcare workers that might be like in the emergency department, like say in Rockland County, New York, or the places where this has been found in the wastewater. So that's all that I have read, because I had the same question. I was like, should I go out and should I get another one? And the answer for me right now is no.
Right.
But again, I think what Dr. Tony said is
you got to beat Amy back from getting these vaccines. I swear to God. Like, she's just like, wait, can I get it?
I know. like my flu vaccine. But yeah, any chance I have,
get to the front of the line.
Any chance I have, I'm getting one.
She's getting a vaccine for everything. It's like, where is there a vaccine for what? I'll take it.
So yeah, but that's I think
that's
right now is high risk, or if you have not, if you're uncertain, or for a fact that did not happen when you were a child. So
you answered this one. It was about, do various strains exist? You said no, actually they don't, because of the canyons inside of the
there are 3 serotypes, but they're all in the vaccine. We're good.
They're all in the vaccine. And will our kids need a polio booster in the future? Again,
don't know.
We don't know. As long as it stays the way that it is right now, the answer is probably no. Yep. But we're always open to the possibility that might be a reality. What do we do to protect our kids? Keep them updated with their vaccine schedule, please. That's the only thing that you can do at the moment, is just make sure that they're up to date. If you did a delayed vaccine schedule, find out what that delayed vaccine schedule was like, and if polio was not in it, get it right now. Get it in there. This is the time.
Can I add one thing to that?
Yeah.
Because it is oral fecal. Wash those hands.
So gross. Wash your hands. Yeah, man, wash your hands. I mean, listen, as an aside, the respiratory viruses that are occurring in this month are out of control.
Yeah.
And so a lot of them are not just respiratory droplets, it's contact. So wash those gosh darn hands. Teach your kids to wash their hands. I mean, again, we know how our children are alive, like you talked about. And him licking the zoo fence.
Oh God.
And I have
so cringe.
My precious Anthony, who just like, where's the germ? Where is it? So he can just make sure he slobs it in every nostril. I mean, you just gotta get your kids to get into the habit of washing their hands.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's what you can do to protect them. What are the symptoms associated with polio? So you know, a lot of the infections are, like I said, without symptoms. They're
Yep.
asymptomatic, which is what is called asymptomatic. And you can just walk around la 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 and have polio and not have anything. Those are most of those infections. Only a small fraction of infected individuals can develop what is called meningitis. So I know Dr. Amy's been talking a lot about the GI tract, but it also does affect the neurons and your motor neurons in your spinal cord. And
Yeah,
so
that's the thing where when it causes paralytic polio disease, it's when it goes into the neurons in the spinal cord.
that's right. But that's only a small fraction. This is a
So
small
small.
fraction, but
So
it's like,
small.
you don't want that. You don't want that.
Yep.
Weakness develops about in about 0.1% of all polio virus infections. And again, it is just due to the selective infection in these motor
Yep.
neurons.
Yep.
For the most part, like I said, about 90% of these infections, you won't have any symptoms.
That's right.
Early signs and symptoms, you'll get, you know, the same viral stuff. You had a headache, you get a sore throat, you know, fever, you feel crappy, nausea, vomiting, you're fatigued, you got malaise. Like it's the same, like you cannot differentiate it from anything else. And so that's the early signs and symptoms, and it happens in less than 10% of individuals.
Yeah.
And it takes about 4 to 10 days to reveal itself. Just like most viruses have the same time frame of incubating. They call it an incubation period. It's a time where they're just kind of hanging out, hibernating, getting themselves ready to spread their wings, if you will. Then after that, you can get this viral meningitis, and then which is meningitis. You usually get like a really terrible headache. There's a fever, there's a stiff neck. It's awful, and there's vomiting involved. Then right after that, you can develop what is called an acute flaccid myelitis, which is the paralysis that Dr. Amy was mentioning earlier. So, basically, it's just basically what happened to FDR, right? One day he woke up and he had a fever and he couldn't feel his legs. It's really that's that acute. It can be that acute. There's neck pain, there's back pain, there's muscle pain. It's just pretty awful. And there's really no cure for this. This is just basically symptom management. For the most part. So that's how it shows up. So don't start freaking out if your kid has like a regular viral cold. If they're vaccinated, you're straight, you're good. You're gonna be
also straight, no, I completely agree. The one thing that when I would teach polio to my students, I would show them pictures of iron lungs. Do you remember those?
Yes.
So for those of you out there that don't know what this is, and hopefully a lot of you don't, because honestly it's horrible, but some people it would affect the muscles for breathing.
That's right.
So that they would die. They couldn't breathe on their own at all. And I think it was the last person on an iron lung just passed away who was infected in the 50s.
Wow.
So infected as a child, was on an iron lung until I think it was either late 2021 or early 2022, but had been laying down on a bed with an iron lung. It looks like an MRI machine. They're huge. I mean, it's breathing for you. You can't go anywhere. You can't walk with this. It's not like, but these iron lungs are essentially what we're keeping hundreds of thousands of people alive when the polio outbreak was in the 1950s. If you look back at photos of it, and that's why I wanted to get rid of it. We wanted to eradicate it because, again, very rare, but there were hundreds, if not thousands of people on these iron lungs. So that's another, you can also be paralyzed like FDR in a wheelchair, but it could also paralyze higher up your diaphragm so that you could not breathe without help.
That's right.
But yeah, it was.
I think that this is a good example of you know, a rare clinical outcome of an infection that's so severe that it's a public health threat, and we need to get vaccines in order, because you don't care if it's one out of 10 people who this happens to. That's not a lot. That's like, look around you, count 9 people, it could be you, you know. And so that's why this is
I'm
so
gonna share my screen real quick. I know
she
we're
couldn't
on a
do it. She
podcast.
couldn't hang on, guys. She
I
couldn't hang
can't
on.
help it. Can you guys see this?
She's trying not to share her screen for
I
two
know,
podcasts.
I'm trying not to, but I can't help it. You guys need to see
help it.
these people lived in these machines. I know it's a podcast, but it's this thing that's around their whole body.
Just Google iron lung,
No.
and it's pretty horrifying, actually.
It is. It's
pretty
anyways.
horrifying.
Yeah, and that's why we want to get rid of it. Everybody
yeah,
needs this
absolutely.
vaccine. Let's get rid of it.
Want to get rid of it. We talked about how and why it is resurfacing and how you get it. We talked about that.
Yeah.
What is the vaccination made up of? And I think we talked about that. We talked about the fact that it's an inactivated viral vaccine,
Yep.
right?
The one we get here. Yep.
How does it impact the body and the mind? I think we talked about that. You know, anything that leaves you with a chronic illness, and we see this with long COVID, is going to affect your mind. It just is. You're going to have
not the vaccine, the disease.
Not the vaccine. Did I say vaccine? Not the vaccine.
No, you did not. But I just wanted to make sure we're like, I think the question was what would polio do to you? If you
how does polio impact the body and the mind? Right.
Yep.
And and I was saying that just like with long COVID, when you have these infections and these conditions and they're chronic, it does affect your mind. It does. And so, you know, you want to make sure that you know, you do everything that you can to protect yourself from having these serious effects that are like, there's no cure for them. You just have to figure out how to live with it and manage it.
Yeah.
And how many cases are currently in America? Do you have an updated figure for that?
I think you mean the United States?
Mm-hmm.
Is it more than just that one person in Rockland County?
I think there's more. I think the actual number is difficult because of the asymptomatic infection, and we're not.
Yes, I thought they meant
we're not testing for
it.
So we're not. So to give you a hardcore number, it's going to be inaccurate. Is basically what I'm going to say. It's going to be inaccurate. I think at the moment we're learning along with you in terms of how many folks will develop this, because we'll get the news, we'll get the press releases of the severe cases.
Yeah.
And so far it's just that one I thought it was two other.
I see worldwide it said 4 cases, but when was this?
Can't be worldwide. That can't be accurate, because we're not talking about the places that don't have full vaccination coverage then. And that's not
true.
Accurate. That's not accurate.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would maybe the US and UK.
Yeah, maybe. You know what? This is from a British site, so yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm looking at a cute little.
Imagine they say worldwide. How dare they?
Yeah. Oh wait, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, sorry. There were 11 cases across the world of new polio virus last week.
Oh, last week. Okay.
Last week.
And across the world.
Across the world last week were 11 new cases. Afghanistan, Pakistan, Mozambique, Benin, Democratic Republic of Congo, Ghana, Madagascar, Malawi, Nigeria.
Last week.
So it's going up.
It's ticking. It's ticking up.
Yeah.
So
I mean, oops.
Yeah. I think that's all I have for polio questions. If there are other questions that we didn't cover, or if some of our answers gave you more questions, you know what to do.
Hey, I just realized right now that there was no pun intended. I just swore, but it kind of makes sense for this.
What'd you say?
I said SHIT.
Oh, you did.
And you know what? No pun intended. This is an intestinal disease.
It is an intestinal disease.
Oral fecal.
Ick. Okay, and we're going to sign off.